Grab your Bibles. If you don't have a Bible, you got some in the back. We are in Joshua chapter 2. This is nothing about obedience. This is just about common sense of following the service, right? Joshua chapter 2. I'm liking the study of Joshua. I know we're just kind of getting into it, but there's a lot here. Joshua is a really unique and a really interesting book. So, as you're flipping there, let's pray. Lord, come before you, Father, just asking that you would speak to us out of the text. It's your word to us, and we value it, and we trust it so highly. And we want to worship you and glorify you and learn about you through this, Father. So ask that I would not get in the way of what you have to say, but that your words would ring true, that your words would go penetrating to the heart of where we need to be and what we need to hear. That you would give us words. Amen. I remember, it's probably been over 10 years ago. I was on a missions trip to Guatemala down south. And part of our trip we served and was going to the church down there. And it was an E-Free church, our denomination, E-Free. We were part of this E-Free church in Guatemala, and I was down there, and I remember thinking, sitting in this church, first off, realizing I don't know near as much Spanish as I thought I did. And second off, it was just this overwhelming sense of they worshiping the same God that I do. And I've known that for my whole life. It was like, oh yeah, Christianity is a global religion. It's been all over the world. I've known that my entire life. But something about being there and actually seeing people with all of their hearts singing, and you could pick up some of the songs because you know the tunes but not the words. Seeing them love Jesus, knowing God, the same God that I do. It was this sense of who I worship, who my God is, who Jesus is, became a lot bigger just in that moment. It just kind of exploded. This whole idea of God and his reputation is not the right word, but his glory, his renown, his everything about this is not just Granite Falls, it's not just Minnesota, it's not even just America. It is global. It is global. People know and love Jesus and are giving their lives and are going all out for Jesus. And we see some of this here. We see some of this here because I think sometimes we read the Bible and sometimes we live our lives and we can get tunnel focused. We get this tunnel vision of this is the story, what's going on, and here's what this means for me, and here's how I'm living in this life today. But yet in Joshua, we are starting to see the effects of God going before Israel, of God's name going out, of God's renown, of his glory, of his deeds, of his doings are being heard about before Israel even comes on the scene. Before Israel even gets there, they're not saying, who are you, by the way? What is this group of people doing here? We're seeing people saying, oh, you're God's chosen people. Oh, you're the people of Israel. Oh. And there's this overwhelming sense of this is something important. This God who you're talking about, this is someone significant. This is someone that has power, who does what he says he's going to do. And we get into Joshua chapter 2, and that's really the story. That's really how it comes about. This story that's being told about the interaction of the spies in the city of Jericho is really come about because they have heard about God. And not just heard the name of, I heard about that guy who we talk about at Christmas. Oh yeah, I've heard about that Jesus fellow here and there in different stories. No, there is a sense of this, you're those people. I need to know more. And there's this respect, there's this interaction, there's this depth that they're going for. So, in Joshua chapter 2, okay, and kind of as a side note, in this chunk of scripture, we are going to be talking about, some people have called it the world's oldest profession, ladies of the night type of things, and I'm just giving a warning for the text in here for those of us who are younger. If you're listening and you don't know what this is, we're not going to talk about what it is, but I do want to talk about because it is important to who we are talking about. So, catch what I'm talking about here? Nodding your head? No? Nothing? Okay, here we go. Joshua chapter 2. Okay, Joshua chapter 2, starting in verse 1. And Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly from the Shittim as the spies, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. And they went and came to the house of a lady of the night whose name was Rahab and lodged there. Okay, so here we have a situation. What on earth is going on? Last week we introduced to Joshua. John talked about Joshua as being strong and courageous. That was the challenge. And now the people of Israel are kind of camped right across the Jordan River. They're about to enter into the land of Israel. They're about to enter into the promised land, the land that God has promised to his people for generations and generations. We're talking thousands of years God has been promising this land. And after all the things that Israel has been through, after being slaves in Egypt for 200, 400 years, and being brought into the desert and survived in the desert for 40 years, and seen all the miraculous things of crossing the Red Sea, of being provided manna and quail in the desert, of having water in the desert, of having God doing miraculous things, they're right on the edge, and they're about to cross the Jordan means we're crossing into that land. And that's what the book of Joshua is about getting the land back, the land that God has promised to them. And so all of this kind of hinges on this idea of not is Israel have a military that's powerful enough? That's not the question of the book. The question of the book is, God has promised them this. Will they have faith in a God who has proven to be faithful? That's what we see again and again and again. So here we have Joshua right away sending 2 spies into the land to go check this out. Go, especially check out that one town, especially check out that city of Jericho. Now Jericho is right across the river. It's one of the first cities you get into coming westward across the Jordan, and it's one of the oldest cities in the world, one of the oldest cities we know about in history. And because different generations, different people have occupied this city forever and ever and ever. And it's known as a city who has got walls. It's known as a city of fortitude. It's a solid place. It's not this fortress of walls and big things, but it is quite a city. It does have 2 layers of walls. It has an outer wall. It has an inner wall. It's a well-known city because it's really hard to siege. It's really hard to conquer that militarily. So people have desired that for years and years and years. They have wanted the city of Jericho. So Joshua, being of a mind of what's going to happen next, what does he need to go? He sends spies in, especially check out this one place because this place is going to be key. This place is going to be important. This place is going to be the one that's going to kind of define the entryway into the promised land. So make sure that you're checking out Jericho. Make sure that you're looking at this place too. Also, if you know, he sends 2 spies, which is very different than our last time. Remember when Joshua was sent with 12 spies? And 10 came back and says, nope, we are not going to that land. There are really big people there. We want nothing to do with that. And Joshua and Caleb, 2 of the 12, says, well, we got this. God's got this. We're going to do this. So Joshua sends 2. We don't know their names. We know it's not Joshua, and we know that's about it. He sends 2 people in, view the land, especially Jericho, especially that. And it was told to the king of Jericho, this is verse 2, behold, 2 men of Israel have come here tonight in search our land. So they know what's going on. This is not a massive metropolis. This is a bigger city, don't get me wrong, but they are obviously aware of what's happening. Otherwise, the spies are really bad at being spies. So, which is also possible. Sometimes spies, we think of just people trying to gather information, but spies in the Bible actually can be just as much as spreading information. So they can go to gather information, but they can also be spies that want to spread information about what's happening. They go into Jericho not just to gather military information on how to make a conquest, but also information of this is who we are. And we see this in the Bible, sending out ambassadors, sending out people ahead of them saying, hey, we are the people of Israel, the people of Yahweh, who is our God. Will you let us pass? And they say no, and then they conquer them. You know, it's the same type of place, sending them to Jericho. But the king hears about it, the king of Jericho, the leader of Jericho, and there's someone here. So the king of Jericho said to Rahab, so they know where they're at, they know where they have gone to the place of Rahab, and they send people. The king sends a bunch of people to them saying, you go bring out the people who have entered your house, for they have come to search out our land. They are spies. We know what they're about. So what's kind of happening in this story is these spies have entered Jericho, and they have found a place to lodge, which for those of us maybe familiar with the story, this is the lady who I was talking about, the lady of questionable repute. The lady who has got a history that no one wants to be associated with. The lady who we're kind of a little nervous about. And so the first question we want to ask is, why, oh why, would you go in as spies in Israel and this is the first place you want to go? That's not quite 100% what's happening here, because we don't want to question that, because they are above. The text in the Hebrew goes out of its way to say there was no funny business going on here. Okay? Because probably what this was yes, that was also their profession, but the profession is also probably coupled alongside of that being an innkeeper as well. It was probably just a place to stay. And they're not talking of lots of places to stay. This is a place by the wall, as it's going to come really important later on. Her house had a part of the wall, was a part of the exterior wall. So when she was in her house, the back wall, the south wall, was the exterior wall of Jericho. This is important as it gets to be later. So the king sends his posse to the house. Rahab comes out. They say, we know you got people in here. Send them out. We know that they're staying with you. Send these people out. They're here. They're spies. They're trying to capture our city. They're trying to destroy our livelihood. You got to send them out to us. But the woman had taken the two men and had hidden them. She said, true, men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. That may be very true. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. I don't know. And she's just like, I don't know, even though we fully know well that she's hid them on top of the roof. And the gate was about to be closed. The men went, I don't know where they went, but if you go quick now, you'll catch them. And when but since she had brought them up to the roof and hid them under the stacks of flax, and that's just the type of, they made linen out of that. It was just a type of sheath. And they put that on there to dry and cover that out, so that she had hidden them underneath there. Up on top of the roof was a flat roof. And so the men pursued them on their way out to the Jordan as far as the fords. So they went all the way to the river. And they searched for a long time. We find out later, for days, they were searching for these two men. This is not something they want. They don't want people to come in and find the weaknesses of this place. This is how they have. Jericho has a reputation of being a fortress in history, but it also has a reputation of being conquered because everybody wants it. Everybody wants to conquer Jericho. If you go to the city of Jericho now, they've got this place excavated for archaeology purposes, and they've cut this big cut down the middle of the walls. And if you look at it, there's probably 30 different types of walls that have been constructed over the thousands of years that Jericho has been there. Lots and lots and lots of different ones. All sorts of different places that they have built and made this city secure. This is a city that's been around that people want to have. It's a strategic city. It's a place that says we are a force, that we have something to bring to this place. And here we have the people of Israel coming into this, and of course they're being aware. This is what they're going to say. This is the first city they're going to try to take to prove that we're not just some group of random people wandering around. This is the promised land. This is the land who they are. It's also a very intimidating city. So of course people are going to be nervous about this. This is not the first time I'm sure they've had spies in here. But I bet you it's the first time they've had spies who have actually been given kindness, who have been given a mercy, who have been given something else in addition to just being sneaky. Why? Why? Why was Rahab this way? Why, out of all the things that have happened, why did Rahab pick these two people? Why did Rahab pick the people of Israel to have kindness to? Why is this? And it's because Rahab becomes one of the most profound speakers in this chapter. So at verse 8, before the men lay down, she came up to the roof. So she sends the guards away, sends them on a wild goose chase. So she comes up to the roof and has those conversations. And she says to the men, and this is, if you're an underliner, these are some really important ones. I know, there's Rahab saying, I know. Not I suspect, not I have ideas, I have heard, I know that the Lord, and this is important. Look at that word Lord. Remember, the word Lord can mean just like a Lord is in charge of people, but when it's all capital letters, it means that she is using the name of God. This is not just, she's like, I know that Yahweh. I know that my God. I know that the God who I am personally aware of, who I have the personal knowledge of, not just I've heard about your God. I know that God has given you the land and that the fear of you has fallen upon us. Might be why the king is so panicky. Might be why the king is so concerned what's going on. And that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. That's coming from the mouth of Rahab. Rahab, who does not have a good reputation in this place. Who does not have something that if you're looking for people in the town who you can trust, this is not who they would run to. This is not a person who you think, just because of the history of who they are, this is not like, oh yeah, that's the person I want to go to right away and make a military alliance with. But here we have Rahab saying, I know God. And I know the things that he has said. I know what this is about. Israel is not exactly a military might. They are not coming in saying that we have millions of people. Israel is not someone that causes fear militarily into the hearts of these people. They cause fear into the hearts of Jericho and all these cities because their God is actually powerful. Their God is actually true. Their God is actually faithful. Our God is that way. That is who we're talking about. And here she says, I know that he has given you the land. That's a pretty profound statement. For thousands of years we've talked about this. Remember way back when we read about Abraham in Genesis and God says, I will give you a land. This is the land he's talking about. I will give you the land. I'm going to bring you out of Egypt and I will give you a land. This is the land we're talking about. They bring him into the promised land. They bring him into the wilderness. And here's the promised land right here. This is the land for you. He has set aside this place for Israel to have this. This is yours. Given by God because God has said it. Not because God is greedy. Not because God is all about saying, I'm going to do what I'm going to do because I'm God and I'm going to do what I want. But there's a purpose in this. If you think about where the land of Israel is, it's in the middle of all of the roads and all of the seas and all of the passings in this area. Why is that so important? Because what is the purpose of what Israel is about? What is the purpose of what God is about? It's spreading his renown, spreading his name, of making known who is really God, who is really the one who saves, who is really the one who loves, who is really the one who is going to make a way for all of humanity to be saved. Let's put the promised land right in the middle of all the pathways, of all the crossways, so that everyone who travels anywhere has to go through this land and they have to hear about the goodness and the power and the loving mercy of God. That's intentional. That's on purpose. As we read through this, yes, there are things when we say God does this and we're amazed at the amazing things that God is doing, but he's doing it for a purpose. That his name to go out, for people to know, for people to understand, for people to find God who saves. This is that God. Giving the land to them. I know that the Lord has given you this land. And the fear of us is fallen upon us. Jericho is already conquered and they don't even realize it, do they? The fear has fallen upon them. And the inhabitants of the land will melt away before you. Now that word melt's kind of interesting. It's kind of a weird word, right? I don't exactly, when I read it, I was like, this isn't exactly how I would describe a military conquest, a melting. But people are melting away. And it's actually referencing Exodus chapter 15. So if you want to take a note, you sure can. Exodus 15:15 is the Song of the Sea. Israel has just crossed the Red Sea. They've just watched the waves come in and demolish and wipe away all the Egyptians who are following him. And Miriam, the sister of Moses, sings the Song of the Sea. And in the Song of the Sea is not just the song we sing because, yay, we're not dead. Yay, we're not captured. That's part of it. But part of it is there is promises and the reminder of this is what God is about. This is what God is doing. See, again and again and again, I will be faithful to you. I will lead you. I will do what I have promised. I will continue to be by you even when things seem like there is no hope. I mean, they literally just said they were cornered between an Egyptian army and a sea, and God made the sea move. That's incredible. And that's what the faithfulness that God has determined to his people. And it's the same that we can draw from that, saying God is still faithful to those who he loves, which is us. That's the kind of faithfulness he has. And in that song, it says that the people of the land, the people of the promised land, any of the foes, and they list the Moabites, the Canaanites, all the people who will come into contact with Israel and will try to defeat them, he says they will melt away in the face of God who is leading them. They'll just be gone. They will melt. It's not that they will be wiped away, but they're just going to melt. They're going to come into contact with God and his plans and his ways, and God's ways are going to flourish. They're going to win. They're going to always be moving forward. And that is still true. It's not just true for just Joshua. It's not just true for the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's true for today, and it's true for all of eternity until we get to heaven face to face. The forces who are against God will melt. They will not stand. They are not able to stand. They're not able to withhold who God is and what God is doing. Do we trust God that much? I mean, that's what I look at when I look at Rahab and I see the story of her and see her faith. And in the midst of all of this thing, she's thrown her lot in with two people. How did she know that they were the right people? The people of Israel. She's like, I know this is your God. I know this is the God I've heard about. I'm putting everything in on this. Because I've seen what he's done. I've seen how he's moved heaven and earth and all of the creation to make sure that these people are safe. And this is the God who I'm going to throw everything in with. There is no one else that compares. Rahab has probably worshipped multiple gods her entire life. all sorts of other things. And she encounters just a hearing of the true God, and everything in her heart is like, this is what I have been waiting for. This is who I have been looking to put all my trust and the faith into. And she goes and says, I know this. It's not a suspicion. I know God. She's had some encounter. She has put all of it in one basket. This is the God I want to follow. Verse 10, for we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the other kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan. They've already done some conquering of Sihon and Og, where there's some cities that we destroyed as well. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. That's a potent statement. There is no God in the heavens above or the earth beneath. It's a statement of not just saying, yeah, your God's more powerful than this God that I've already been worshiping. It's a statement of your God is the creator God, who there is nothing that he does not have power over. There is nothing. And that's who I am worshiping too. That's who I'm throwing in my lot with. So now, what would you do with this information? I mean, this is what I find so interesting about Rahab. It's just this, she's had a moment. She's had something where she's had, I don't know if you want to call it a conversion or a moment where she's encountered God truly, where her life has changed, where she's putting everything in, she's given up, she's completely disregarded the king of the city where she lives and makes her profession, in order that she can hide two men that she's never met before in her life, that she wants to throw everything with. Something has shifted in that. Something has changed where she has faith in this. I don't think it's faith in the men. I think she has faith in God, because God has proven that he is faithful. The stories are true. This is why I think it's so important as Christians we take time to remember the things of our past, the things of our history, the places where God has moved us, where we look back and we say, that wasn't me, or I would have not been here if God didn't shift me this way, or pull me that way, or push me over here. When we look back and we see those moments, we can't help but just be like, that wasn't me, or we can't say, oh man, I'm so lucky. I have a hard time saying that, because I just see the hand of God doing things in my life, sometimes big, sometimes small, but always intentional and always purposeful, and I can't help but be like, that's what you did, and you did it because you want me where I'm at. I'm not an accident. I'm not here because something has just happened, but God has done that for me on purpose, because he cares for us, because he has a plan for us, because he is worthy to be worshipped, and he has a plan, and he is worshipped. So that's how our response is. So what does Rahab do with that? Verse 12, now please swear to me by the Lord. And that word swear is really important. It's not just we're not talking about swearing. And we're not talking about just like oath, raise your right hand. And this is actually the biblical word for hesed, which is a fancy word saying it's God's covenant faithfulness. The same word that God says when he says to Abraham, I will make you a great nation. I will send someone to fulfill the promises. I will send someone to die for sins. I will send someone to come and love you, to save you and rescue and be your salvation. That's the same type of covenant that Rahab is asking for. I want that kind of covenant. I don't want just your word. I don't want you to say, yeah, if we remember, we'll save you. I want your covenantal promise faithfulness that you will do with all of your loving kindness because of what we've had, that you will do what you can to save me. That you will go out of your way to save me. And she doesn't just say, and myself. Don't just save me. She says, and my entire family. Rahab is pushing past cultural things. She's not relying on the dad or any type of husband or any type of man. She's just like, I know this is true, and nothing else matters in comparison to what I know is true, and I know that God is the God who saves. And she's grasping onto that, and she's saying, and promise me that you will save me when the time comes and the city is destroyed. She already knows. Jericho hasn't fallen yet. This hasn't happened for another 4 chapters. But she's already saying, please, in this time, you will save me. Please make that promise to me. And the men do. The men do make that promise. Here's what I find is so interesting. What is she going to do with that information in the meantime? We have 4 chapters. I don't know how long. It's not just a matter of hours. It's not a matter of days, because we know from the story of Jericho it's going to take at least a week to conquer it. So we're talking, there's a time period of more than a week, we don't know exactly how long, where she has this knowledge of salvation. How she can be saved from the inevitable coming destruction. She knows She knows that God is true. She knows that God has continued to be true and be faithful through all these generations. And she knows that destruction is coming. What is she going to do with that information? She's going to save her family. If you come into this house, if you come into this room at this time, then you will be saved. And I can't help but draw the same conclusion to where we are. As Christians living in the world, we have this knowledge that the world is going to be destroyed. That people are on their way to a place that is not pleasant, that is not fun, and we have not just the answer, but we have hope to live in a world that is dying, that it doesn't have hope. And sometimes we just say, oh, I've got it, I'm good, I'm going to sit, I'm thankful that I am saved. But Rahab, in the midst of everything that's going on, still is like, I have this information, and she has her family that is saved with her in the end. Not just her, she is sharing the information. She's like, I know the way. I have the answers. I know the God that's true. I haven't just heard these stories. I don't just know the future. She's putting her hope in the God who actually is saving people, who actually is powerful, who actually is the one who does this. That's who she throws everything in with. We're going to skip down a few verses to 15. She lets the spies down by a rope through the window. For her house was built into the city wall so that she lived literally in the wall. Now, don't just think her house is like 10 feet wide. It was literally, she has a house, and the wall was part of the wall. The men make this promise to her in verse 18, behold, when we come back, when we come into the land, you shall tie this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and you will gather in your house your fathers, your mother, your brothers, and all of your father's household. Then if anyone goes in or out of the doors in your house in the streets, his blood shall be on his own head, and we will be guiltless. So she's like, this is how you're saved. You see this scarlet cord? I want you to tie it in the window so that we know that this is the house that saved us, that this is the house that believes in God, that this is the house that has thrown everything in on the God who is saving you, who's faithful. This is the one, okay? Now, we kind of got to spoil a little bit of what's going to happen in the next 4 chapters, because how does Jericho destroyed? It's not just secretly snuck in and conquered. The walls of Jericho fall down. They come tumbling down. Okay, anyone else singing a song? Okay, no, just me. Whatever. Jericho's walls fall down. They don't get sieged. They come down. God knocks them down, and they come up and over into the city and conquer the city. But Rahab's house is left, or she's alive. Her house is spared, and it's a part of the wall. There is a miracle in itself, just that the wall is not collapsed, it has not killed her entire family, but they are saved through this. Now, there have been many sermons where people are like, oh, the scarlet cord, and they make this big deal about the scarlet cord and the blood. Absolutely, if that's what helps us remind us. But I think it's almost more impressive that she's in the midst of all of this chaos, in the midst of all of this, in a profession that is not known for being doing well, and a profession that's got to have a hard life that comes with it. And she meets these people, and she goes, you believe in God? I do too. I want that. And she throws everything on God and His faithfulness. Yeah, the scarlet cord can mean blood. Absolutely. Absolutely, it's blood of Jesus that has saved her. Absolutely, it's the blood that continues to bring her to trust in God who is faithful. But it's that faith of, I'm just throwing everything with God. It's that faith of everything like that is absolutely incredible, because what we know about Rahab is so amazing, because she's not just this one name character we never hear about again, but we hear about her throughout the Bible. And what's so neat is her family is saved, her family is brought out, and is integrated into the nation of Israel. She is not she's not a native-born Israelite, but she's brought in. And she marries a guy named Salmon. Okay? Whoop-de-doo, Salmon. And Salmon and Rahab have a son, and his name is Boaz. Now we're starting to maybe be more familiar with that name. Boaz marries a gal, also a foreigner, Moabite, named Ruth. Ruth and Boaz have a son named Obed, who has a son named Jesse, who has a son named David. David, who has a son, on and on, has a son named, in the lineage of Jesus, named Christ. Rahab isn't just brought in and say, oh, yep, you're saved, you made it by the skin of your teeth. Man, you got so lucky, Rahab. Oh, good for you. They bring him in, and they bring him into the family of Israel, and not just that, into the family of Jesus Himself. This is where you talk about God and His faithfulness. Yes, God does incredible things. Yes, God does miracles. Yes, God does things that are absolutely beyond sometimes believability. But God does more than that. He comes to the ultimate miracle, which is, I see us in our sin, no matter who it is. The fact that Rahab in her profession wasn't just saved, but was saved and then brought into the line of Jesus Himself is God's way of saying, I can redeem anything. There is no sin too far gone that I can't save you from it. There is no sin too far captivating your life that I can't free you from it. Even the walls of a city, the life of being lost, there is nothing that God cannot do, that God cannot save us from. That's incredible. Rahab is not just a foreigner, not just a professional sinner, but she was saved by God for the purposes of God, for the line of Jesus himself, and became one of the 4 women listed in the genealogy of Jesus. It's incredible. What can God do for us? I found a quote here, if I can figure out where it is. Faith in Christ alone saves, but the faith that saves is never alone. This is what I see when I read the story of Rahab. She's all about, I'm all in on God. 100% in, I believe in God. But think about this. She believed in God, but she did something because of it. It was not just her faith alone, but she's like, I'm going to save these men. I'm going to be a part of this. That I'm going to show you this is what I'm really about. That my faith is not just something that I've said in my words, I've said in my mouth, but this is who I am. My life has begun to change. My life has begun to shift because my life is found in Jesus, who doesn't leave me alone, who doesn't leave me where I was, but has sought me and he has bought me, and then he has brought me into his kingdom for a purpose. For a purpose. And the more that I think about my life, as I think back on the history of who I am and the history of all the things that I've done, the more I am continually amazed at, why did you save me, God? Do you not know what I've done? Do you not see my life? Do you not see how wicked I have been in my life? And God's like, yeah, I know. But yet I have brought you in, and I have redeemed you, and I have made you a purposeful tool for my glory. There is no better place to be than at the feet of what Jesus is doing in our life. It's incredible. It's incredible. So Dave? So the end of the story, the spies come back to Joshua and they give this report. And what they say I find is so phenomenal. Truly, God has given us the land. Truly, they say this. Truly, he has. Whether there was any doubt before of God, what he's done in the past, what he's done in history, there's this realization of this doesn't just happen by accident. This doesn't happen by coincidence. This doesn't just happen because we're lucky. Truly, God has done this. And there's a great comfort in that realization that God's renown has gone before him, always before him. And there's a challenge in that as well to us, that as God's renown continues to go out before us, his reputation is known. Not just Rock Haven's reputation, but God himself's reputation as Christians, as bearers of the image of God. How do we respond when we run into people who are asking questions? I have heard of that God. I know that God. I've heard of the things that he's done. Yes, let me tell you more. Let me tell you of his faithfulness throughout generation after generation. Have a great Sunday, guys. Call me with questions. Thanks.